Episode of Reading Through the Bible. My name is Carl, and today we'll be reading through Matthew 17, which is about the Transfiguration of the Christ, among a couple other things. Pretty awesome chapter today, a lot of cool stuff. I feel like I say that about every chapter, but it's the Bible, so it's kind of the truth as well. There definitely are some boring chapters, but, for the most part, some pretty good stuff in here. So, going to be an interesting one, a lot to talk about. Like I said, I usually start these things out, with a little monologue of myself and stuff and how I'm doing, not only to give you guys an update, but also to give some of my buddies time to get in here and watch it live because they're never, particularly ready right at 10 a.m. I think eventually I'll probably get one of those stream is starting type deals, and maybe turn the stream on 5 minutes early or something, have like a countdown and stuff so that, people can get the notification, get set up, get settled in. But, I'm not that fancy yet. Unfortunately, all I have is the camera and the Bible, and it's simple. And I like it that way. But eventually I'll probably update it to make it a little more amenable to, people trying to catch the live stream and stuff. So, I was thinking about it today and, just, I guess, talking about how I prepare for these. I don't write anything out. This is all really just off the cuff. It's just prayer, to be honest with you. I pray that God will speak through me and don't really prepare anything. There are definitely stuff that I think about, like over the course of the day, after, yesterday's into today's, and themes that, I see. So I'll usually talk about something like that or something that, I'll read, the chapter that we're going to do today, for example. I read it, an hour, 30 minutes before we do this, just to see, what I'm going to be talking about and just give me, kind of refresh my memory because it's been a while since I've read Matthew. So nothing super special that I'm doing. I'm not like in the study room all day, every day, writing these up. These are really just off the cuff opinions and thoughts that I'm having. Occasionally I will prepare something like a visual aid, like I did for Matthew 15 a couple days back. But that's really just if I see something and really feel like I need to tie something in with themes and stuff and have you guys be able to follow along. So like I said, I'm just keeping it simple. And for me, it's just, like I always say, starting conversations, building relationships is the purpose, at least my purpose of the stream and videos. But, God's purpose may be something completely different. And so I'm open to whatever he has and however many people he wants to reach, however big he wants to make this community. A lot of times I stream to 0 people, and that's fine with me. I'm not doing this for my ego. I'm doing this for him. And I'm committed to this long-term project. Like I said, it's going to take at least 5 years for me to finish this. And who knows what happens over the course of that, but I'm not here for any kind of accolades, etc. Which brings me to, the next thing that I was kind of thinking about. And I really hope that I can organize my thoughts properly on this because there were a lot of different thoughts from a lot of different levels and angles, and I was thinking about how to organize it earlier, and I'm like, oh man, this is just going to be a mess. So hopefully I don't just, throw everything out at you guys, and it's easier to follow. Everything is a process, right? And I guess the entire thought process of that stemmed from last night and just giving you guys my daily update on how I'm doing with things. And so I've been on the carnivore diet. I would say it's a dirty carnivore diet because I had like fried chicken the other day. Okay, it's meat, but sometimes covered in flour. I had 4 breasts total. 3 of them were fried. 1 was grilled because I wanted to try the grilled and see, okay, is this going to, satisfy the hankering that I had? And I've found that usually it's better not to continue to try and push through with a diet where you're feeling like, okay, I want to break the diet, and then you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then eventually you just break, and then you go crazy and off it. So give yourself a little bit, treat yourself a little bit. Okay, next day, get back to business, right? Well, things tend to progress sometimes too as well. So I think it was Wednesday, I had tater tots with my steak. Okay, it was like 10 tater tots. Not a huge deal, just wanted to get kind of a different taste. I was just feeling like, finishing up the tater tots. They were in the freezer for a while. Okay, the next day I had fried chicken. Okay, not a huge deal, little concessions here. Last night, I think honestly, I just waited too long to eat, but I was just like, I need a different taste, blah, blah, blah. And I definitely failed, right? I went off the diet. Originally I went to Chipotle, which is to me kind of the closest thing. It's like usually in the bowls I get a rice, I get meat, I get sour cream and cheese. So really rice is the only thing that's off the diet technically. Like I said, kind of dirty carnivore. It's not strict carnivore. But after Chipotle, for some reason I was not fulfilled. I was not satisfied. I was not satiated. And so I went to Pizza Hut afterwards, which is like, I'm sure you guys are thinking like, what the heck right now? And that's kind of what I'm thinking too. But yeah, I had both last night. I didn't completely finish the Pizza Hut, so there's still some left over for today that I got to eat, which is, something that I need to start thinking about. But the point is that everything's a process, and you're not always going to be perfect at everything, right? And in fact, we can't be perfect at everything. Only Christ was perfect. And we are going to struggle with a lot of things. And for me specifically, like I've had 3 things typically that I struggle with a lot, and that's, porn, overeating, and drinking, abusing alcohol, right? I've prayed about a lot of these things, and God has really taken away the desire to drink alcohol from me. It didn't happen overnight. I want to stress that, and that's kind of the point of this whole thing is process. But one day I did wake up and I was just like, you know what? I don't really want to drink anymore. And it was gone like that. Now, that being said, I want to point out that let's take, for example, a process of losing weight because, we're kind of on the subject anyway. There's going to be a point in your weight loss journey. Let's say you're losing, 50 pounds or something. There will be a point where you start getting compliments and people say, oh my God, you look great. Have you lost weight? Oh, you look great. And you could stop there. That could be, your goal. That could be, oh, I just want the compliments, right? Or you could finish, going all the way to whatever your goal weight was, right? It's like you have a light switch and you're kind of slowly switching off, but at some point that light is going to shut off and you're going to be the point where it's like, do I finish this? Do I need to finish this? Right? And so goal setting is super important, but also following through on those goals is super important as well. And that's what I'm saying. Like these things are a process that doesn't happen overnight. For me, it probably took 10 years for me to actually stop drinking. And I haven't completely. I just, occasionally have, like I said, a glass of watered down wine or something. And I'll have some beers with my neighbors every once in a while, but nothing like it used to be every night partying, drinking as much as I can. It's a process. And over the 10 years, like I would think every couple months, I'd be like, man, this isn't fun. Why am I doing this anymore? And then be like, oh no, I got to party, and it was a mental mind state. It wasn't like a dependency physically at that point, thankfully, because there is alcohol dependency physically. But it was a process, right? And then it would be every 2 months and then every month. And then every night I started thinking, I'm like, why am I doing this anymore? Like, this isn't fun. It's not good for my body. I started really feeling the effects as I got older. And so it was a process. And then that light switch flipped through the process. And now, like I said, I'm not drinking as much. I'm still drinking occasionally, but that light switch is off. So I'm not, on the train or the hype train of desiring drinking all the time every night. And as that slowly gets close to the bottom of the light switch flip, it'll phase out the rest of my drinking. But it's important not to just stop your efforts once you achieve that part of the goal, right? Like I said, you don't stop dieting or, changing your lifestyle or exercising or doing what you're doing through a weight loss program just because you start getting compliments. You go all the way through. That's something that I learned, and not to set myself up as a nerd, but a while back, I didn't have a job. This was like when I was younger and stuff. So I had some money to live off of. I was single. I was like, you know what? I'm going to play World of Warcraft a lot. I'd started this when I was living with my grandpa, taking care of him, and it just kind of continued. I didn't really have any aim in life. I was, in the middle of a hockey coaching thing, so I had all the time in the world, and I was just played World of Warcraft for 16 hours a day. I decided to start my own guild, which is a group of people who, have common interests and do things together, kind of like a family on the game. And I had just this burning inner desire to be the best, but I never defined what the best was. And so what ended up happening is we stayed together maybe in a year and a half, 2 years, doing these things and building and working. And then finally I started to get messages from the leaders of the other guilds telling me, oh, we think you guys are the best on the server. And the server is just, whatever group of people that you play with, not to get too technical. Anyways, so that became, to me, that was the end of the road. Right? Like I didn't ever define that goal of what I wanted, the best to mean. And so when those people started giving me accolades, that completely quenched the fire inside of me. And I'm like, I'm done. Completely killed the guild. Said everybody, hey guys, I'm not going to play anymore. You guys do whatever you want. It's over. So while I'm thankful that happened, because I don't think that was a super healthy obsession for me, and definitely, got me out of that gaming. I'm completely satisfied at this point. I've gotten my closure, so to speak. But it taught me a lot about goal setting and reaching goals and having tangible goals and things like that. And so I think it's very important to understand that, we have goals and things are a process, and we have to lean on God for that process. We can't do it ourselves, for things like the sin that we're really, ingrained in ourselves. We really have to lean on him and ask for change. And that's what I was asking for through this, process of stopping drinking. It wasn't just me, waking up every 3 months and being like, oh, this is no fun. I should do something different. It was me praying and saying, Lord, change me. Lord, change me. That brings me to my next point is, I failed last night, like I said, and that's going to continue in today because I have leftovers that I paid for that I'm not going to throw out. And so that's going to take me off my diet today as well. And number one, I had to realize that, it's not the end of the world, right? You don't just take the rest of the week and throw it down the drain and start eating and drinking everything you can just because you failed once. The next day, you have to, start anew. You ask God for forgiveness, but more importantly, you forgive yourself. And you say, you know what? I messed up, but it's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to get right back on it. I'll finish the pizza. And then I'll just have a steak and, right back with it. The next thing is that, there are a lot of us, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us will have some sort of thorn in our side. And this comes from Paul, actually. Paul is a big character in the New Testament, and writes a lot of the books, and we follow him and his journey and stuff. And he's, a super apostle, right? He's what most of the New Testament is written about, along with Christ. And yet he had a thorn in his side. Now, we don't know exactly what it was. The Bible doesn't really say, but we can guess at a couple things. Maybe it was a blood issue. Some people think it was an issue with his eyes, because I actually just read through Galatians, and in the middle or the beginning of Galatians, he's talking about how loving that church was when he first came there. And he felt like they would rip out their eyes and give it to him when he had an ailment that was, hampering him from being able to preach the gospel to him. So some people think it's eye related. Whatever it was, he prayed about it multiple times for God to take it away from him. God said no. Christ actually told him that my power is made perfect in your weakness. And so Paul was like, okay, I'll be weak, right? Now, to be fair, this is not necessarily something that was brought on by him. We don't really know, like I said, but I feel like my sins are brought upon by myself. Now, there are certainly outside forces at work, but I've indulged myself so long in overeating and things like that they've become a staple, a habit of mine, and that's really difficult to break. So praying about it definitely will help, and I've already obviously made the start of those processes where, I'm eating carnivore, I'm being cleaner, but I still have those mistakes, I still have those problems The times where I'm able to stay on a diet and lifestyle that's healthy for me are longer and longer now, right? But there will still be slip-ups. There will still be issues down the line. I think of Brennan Manning, who is a really big influence on me and my faith. He was, a New York Jew, Messianic Jew, great Christian, has a lot of good books out there. Read Abba Father if you can. Ragamuffin Gospel. There's a bunch of really good books, and you can listen book on tape too. But this guy was like, man, what a life he lived. He, grew up not being Christian, then became a Catholic, went through that whole thing, went on like sabbaticals out to the mountains and lived in a cave by himself where he barely ate and stuff for months on end so that he could, try and meditate on God and see God and stuff like this. Just a bunch of crazy stories, but throughout this entire thing, he was a raging alcoholic. And it wasn't constant all the time, but it would still rear its ugly head at seemingly the most inopportune times as well, right? And he said, I remember waking up on a curb in Louisiana, New Orleans, right after partying all night, just, holding my head, being like, oh my God, I don't know where I am. Like, what am I doing here? All that kind of stuff. And just, living that kind of life where like he was in and out of it. And he had that thorn in his side that he just really struggled with his entire time, and yet still a great Christian, right? And so trying to point out that we all have our flaws. We're all going to have these processes that we go through of sanctification where Christ is making us more like him. And, it takes longer for some people, and a lot of times we slip up, but it's important not to, blame yourself over that and just get right back on the horse and keep riding. And also to ask God to change you and your heart. That is the biggest thing, because he can do in crazy power. Like I there's no way I would have stopped drinking without him, right? Excuse me, as I drink. This is water, by the way. There's no way I would have been able to do that. Like I would have still had those realizations like, oh, this isn't fun, but my desire would have still been there, and it probably would have led me to death, to be honest with you. So asking him, is the number one importance, and then following through on that and not blaming yourself when you slip up. I hope I covered everything in a way that you're able to follow. That was kind of a long monologue, I know, but these are the things I was thinking of, and I was asking God to speak through me with the Holy Spirit on that. It doesn't necessarily line up with what we're reading through today, but I think it's applicable to everyday life for us and going through processes. And there are things that we deal with and struggle with on a day-to-day basis and throughout our lives that we can apply this to. So just things I was thinking about that, I wanted to pass along to you guys. Okay, time to get into it. Matthew 17, the Transfiguration. Let's go ahead and pray first. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today, Lord. We ask you to open our hearts and minds to your gospel, your word, Lord. We thank you so much for just being there, Lord, for despite being an all-powerful God, you still love us so much that you sent your Son to die on the cross for our sins and give us salvation. Lord, we ask that you speak through me with the Holy Spirit, Lord, and just help us to learn and to apply this framework, this template that you're giving us, how to live, like Christ. In Jesus' righteous holy name, amen. All right, go ahead. The Transfiguration. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was speaking, a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. Get up, he said. Don't be afraid. When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, Don't tell anyone what you've seen, until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. The disciples asked him, "Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, and have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. Jesus heals a demon-possessed boy. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. "Lord, have mercy on my son," he said. "He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." "You unbelieving and perverse generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "Because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible." Jesus predicts his death a second time. When they came together in Galilee, he said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised to life." And the disciples were filled with grief. The temple tax. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From who do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the children are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." That is the word of the Lord. Praise be to God. Okay, wow. Some craziness, some miracles. Awesome. Okay. The Transfiguration. Okay. So Jesus takes with him Peter, James, and John. Okay. As I was reading through commentary, there's a couple reasons for this. Number one, those are his favorite apostles, right? It's interesting because there are allusions in the Bible to God having favorites. David was his favorite, God the Father's favorite. He just had a heart after God. So it's very interesting to think about that. We think of God as, he is all loving, he's all knowing, but he has favorites, which is very interesting to me. It makes him more human. And obviously he's going to have unfavorites because of that as well. Those people probably not going to heaven. So it's interesting to think about that, God will have people who he prefers over others. I'm not sure how that fits in everything, but very interesting. Those were also likely the leaders of the apostles, the stronger members as well, and went up to a high mountain by themselves. So the other thing here is that in contrast to the Pharisees who love to pray big prayers in the middle of everybody, so that they could get, praised by the people. "Oh, look how amazing he looks. Oh, he's praying this big grandiose prayer." Jesus did it completely privately. They would go up on mountains by themselves. And the commentary was talking specifically about, yes, a hill, a city on a hill won't be easily hidden with light, but people on a hill, 3 people, 4 people on a hill can definitely be hidden. It'd be hard to find them, right? And so they're in isolation. And when you talk to God, that's how God prefers it. Jesus goes up on these mountains to talk privately with his disciples, but also to pray to God. And later on in Matthew, we'll see that, he's praying so earnestly that, his sweat is like drops of blood coming out of his body. It's so intense. And so that's what we should do as well, right? We shouldn't be out in public praying big prayers, putting on a display. Our job, as Jesus says, is to go into your room, shut the door, and pray alone with God and have that communion with God. So another thing to add to our template on how to act, how to be, but definitely, you need that privacy when talking with God. So, okay. There he was transfigured before him. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. So he's basically shedding his human appearance for these three and showing them that he truly is God, right? He is God incarnate in a human body. And yeah, Moses and Elijah also appear. Moses and Elijah are from the Old Testament, obviously already dead. And they're talking with Jesus. And so in one of the other books, it says that, Peter says this, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters. And he doesn't know what he's saying. He's just like, Lord, it's good for us to be here. I see 3 of you. Can I put up a shelter for each of you? Like, he doesn't know, what he's talking about, right? And then God the Father comes, a bright cloud comes and covers them, and a voice from the cloud says, this is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. Right? And that's a living command. That is not something that was just for these guys. It's for us too. Right? And Jesus's words are recorded in the Bible for us to listen to. So it's very important that we need to open our ears and listen. Okay. Disciples get scared. Rightly so. Can you imagine just like a bright cloud coming above you and starting to speak to you? Terrifying, right? And the reason this is a cloud and not God's actual body is because they can't literally see him. If they do, they'll die. So I would imagine at that point, you're just terrified for your life and you're saying, okay, none of us, I don't think in America have experienced anything scary enough for us to really fear for our lives. Now, there's occasionally a time where you'll be going through a bad neighborhood, or the other day, not even a bad neighborhood. I was at Chipotle, again, Chipotle, that's my bane, right? Close to my home, and a guy in the parking lot pulled a gun, and like he definitely looked like he was in the clothes and, the type to come in and rob the store. And then so I'm getting up. I'm like, how do I get out of here? I was parked closest to him too. And I was like, I can't walk past him in the parking lot. What happens? And so right as I'm getting up and I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm just going to walk away outside the store somehow and pray that, I'm okay. Right as I'm doing that, some guy walks out of the store, gets in the car, and this guy gets in the back seat. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess that just happened. Meanwhile, while, I was debating what I was going to do, one of these kids, who had just ordered Chipotle, walks out of the store, sees the guy, turns around, walks right back in. And after they had all left, the kid was like, oh man, he's like, oh, he's gone. And I turned to him, I was like, dude, did you see that? I was like, I was about to get the heck out of here. And he's like, yeah, man, me too. Like, crazy stuff. So, yeah, scary stuff. Sometimes, obviously we can go through those in our lives, but I don't think we've ever, I can imagine that being in the presence of God would be way more terrifying than facing down any gun. Not necessarily because the inevitability isn't the same, right? You're going to die likely, but it's different, right? Because God is all powerful. It's like you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what he's capable of. He's all powerful. He's omniscient. We don't experience a power like that ever in our lives typically. Like the hardest hurricane or rainstorm or windstorm is nothing compared to, what he can do. And those things make us fear for our lives, but we don't get those on a daily basis, right? And so it's like, I don't know. I can imagine that these guys are like just terrified. Yeah, like it says, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. And then Jesus came and touched them. I wonder what the significance of that is. If it's like a settling touch, or if it's like they were literally frozen and they couldn't do anything, and he touches them and like unfreezes them or something, kind of like freeze tag or something, right? But as I'm reading through this, thankfully with you guys, I'm learning that nothing in the Bible is out of place, right? Everything's put there for a reason. So Jesus came and touched them for a reason. And he said, get up. He said, don't be afraid. I have to imagine it's for a calming effect. And this is Jesus's human aspect to him, right? Like he just transfigured. He just showed them, I am God incarnate. but then he also has the side where he's here to comfort and calm us. So, yes, as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus tells them, don't tell anyone what you've seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead, right? Crazy. He's not only telling them, hey, I'm going to die and I'm going to be resurrected with that one sentence, but he's also telling them, don't tell anybody because it's not time yet for me to be shown in my transfigured form. But the other thing that I was going to say earlier, reading about the commentary, Jesus says earlier that, it takes 2 or 3 witnesses to verify something. And so that's why he takes a couple of his disciples with him. He doesn't need to take all of them. 3 of them are enough, and they can bear witness and be the ones to tell people. And obviously he gives them instructions. Don't tell people until after I'm raised from the dead. Okay. They ask him about Elijah. This one was fascinating to me when I read through this because I was like, oh man, who's Elijah then? It's John the Baptist, right? And so Elijah, in this specific instance, is it Elijah incarnate? From what I've read, no, but it's the same spirit of Elijah that lived in John the Baptist. And so that's kind of what I had read through, and this was a while back, so I'm not remembering any real details on it. But generally, yeah, it was the same spirit that came and lived in John the Baptist. And so that's what they're saying. Elijah comes, he restores all things. And that was John the Baptist living in living in the wilderness and eating locusts and honey and not drinking alcohol and wearing camel hair. Crazy stuff, right? The wild guy that we're talking about earlier. Cool. All right, Jesus heals a demon-possessed boy, another absolute miracle. The boy has seizures. He falls in fire or water. Another, I believe I remember another gospel tells it, that he falls into these things trying to kill him. Demons trying to kill the boy. But important that, I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal them. Some things take prayer. Some things are stronger. You need faith in order to help that. And that really only comes through exercising your faith, right? We talk about that. Faith is a gift, but you have to use it in order for it to get stronger. It's like going to the gym. You have to do that every day, otherwise it'll atrophy. And so, the disciples, though they lived with Jesus, and probably had some of the greatest faith, or chances at the greatest faith, I should say. Maybe they didn't exercise it every day, because we do see that, some of the people that come to Jesus for healing have great faith themselves, so they've been exercising it. Jesus again with a little quip here. You unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Seems pretty, perturbed, to put it lightly on this one. Jesus rebuked the demon, comes out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Praise be the Lord. Disciples come and they ask Jesus in private. They're like, why couldn't we drive it out? And he's like, you have so little faith. And here's what I talked about, maybe a week ago. Referencing that if you have a faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Faith, super important. We got to use it. We have to exercise it. And it's recognizing that God's in everything and believing that Jesus died on the cross for him, that he can, help you with those sinful desires every single day, picking up your cross and saying, okay, I want to do this, but Lord, help take this desire from me and change my heart. All right, Jesus predicts his death a second time. They came together in Galilee, he said to them. So this is interesting. I don't know if this is it after they came down the mountain. Well, it must be, obviously, but how long this was, like I said, studying and going deeper into what the words say. They came together in Galilee, so they must have been apart for some reason. And so usually they lived together for whatever reason they were apart. Now they come together. He says to them, hey, I'm going to be delivered in the hands of men. They'll kill me. And on the third day, I'll be raised to life. Disciples are filled with grief. Obviously, this isn't the first time they've heard this. Hopefully they've learned their lesson, that they don't have to question Jesus over and over on his miracles or what he's telling them. It seems like since there was nothing said by Peter or anything, that maybe they're starting to understand, okay, Jesus is going to die. What does that mean? Grief is I guess appropriate human reaction. But I think I would be, but who knows if I'm actually in that situation. I think I would be very interested in him saying that he would be raised to life, being like, what do you mean by that? Because I'm not sure about you guys, but I don't see people being raised to life every day on the street, right? And I'm sure they didn't either, right? This is not something that happens very often. We only have a couple recorded instances in the Bible, and it was Jesus himself and then Jesus raising somebody else. So interesting stuff. Okay, the temple tax. This one's pretty fascinating. Another miracle. Peter's like, yeah, sure, we pay the tax. So this is an interesting lesson because Jesus is saying that, we don't want to cause offense in the church, right? This is following some of the religious laws that were set forth in time. This to me kind of is along the lines of when Jesus says later, the Pharisees try to trap him, and he says, give unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, give unto God what is God's, right? So basically pay your taxes to the government. There are many times, and as an American, I feel like the IRS is an evil organization that's trying to take my hard-earned money from me, forcefully. But truly, as Christians, we're supposed to not cheat on our taxes. We're supposed to give our full taxes, and despite disagreeing with it and feeling like, hey, this is not necessary, that's what we're called to do. So this goes along those lines. Don't cause offense. Go out, throw your line in the lake. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, you'll find a 4 drachma coin. Miraculous that a fish would have a 4 drachma coin in their house or in his mouth. And Peter, you got to wonder with this guy, right? Like he what kind of faith he must be building if he's going through and just seeing Jesus do all these things, right? I suppose in this situation, obviously you could be rationalizing a lot of stuff, be like, oh, well, man, somebody must have dropped it over a boat. This fish swallowed it. How did Jesus know? I don't know. He saw the fish eat the coin or something like that. And just say, okay, well, this guy, he's got some tricks up his sleeve, but he's, despite being God, like I said, we still put God in a box and say, oh, he's only this powerful, as opposed to having all the power. So, it would be interesting to be in Peter's head at this point and just kind of see what he's thinking. But yeah, that's about all for today. That was kind of a long monologue at the beginning. Went through and didn't really have any other thoughts pop up. So feeling good, and hopefully you guys learned some stuff from that, and I know I did. I appreciate you guys coming by. Hopefully if you're watching the VOD, you can comment, start a conversation, and if you have any questions or corrections or anything like that, let me know. And I'd love to hear from you guys. So thank you for watching another episode of Reading Through the Bible. I'm Carl, and I will see you guys Monday at 10 a.m. All right.